goes the road route. Again has a hold of the 40. Keeps moving. 50, 40, 30, 20. Has one man to beat. Gets out of the ankle tackle and into the end zone.
Live on the Westmoreland Sports Network. This is Westmoreland on the Gridiron, powered by Bowser. Here's your hosts, Sean Myers and Dan Flickinger.
We welcome you into another episode of Westmoreland on the Gridiron here on the Westmoreland Sports Network. You know who I am, Sean Myers. You know who he is, Dan Flickinger. And you know what we're about to do, and that's talk about the biggest stories from high school football across Westmoreland County. Of course, we will also have our top performers from Week 6. We'll run down all the scores across Westmoreland County. Our Plays of the Week segment, we've got 6 big ones to get to, and a couple of interviews. Thomas Pallone, the head coach of the Jeanette Jayhawks, and the first-year starting quarterback for the Burrell Buccaneers, Antonio Perkins. He coming off of a massive performance once again. We'll also look ahead at the Week 7 preview. Hard to believe that it's already Week 7 in just a couple of days. But first, Week 6 created a lot of great matchups. I think this was one of the better weeks that Westmoreland County football's seen, maybe in years. We had some terrific rivalry matchups that also had a lot at stake. And we'll begin with, in the biggest classification, the rivalry showdown, Hempfield-Norwin, a game that's often come down to the wire, and this year no exception. A 33-26 victory for the Knights. This was so massive for them. 19 unanswered points. Jake Knight was one of the stars, not necessarily for his offense, although he did score, but what he did on defense with a couple of interceptions. Tristan Tavares playing through, clearly not 100% after his injury the prior week. So both he and Knight back on the field, and it made all the difference. And now Norwin is certainly a team that's in the driver's seat for the postseason. And for Hempfield area, the Spartans have a lot of work to do.
Yeah, massive win for Norwin. You know, what a game. First of all, you mentioned there were a lot of great games, great comebacks as well. And I know we'll talk about Penn Trafford's comeback against Gateway here in a little bit. Greensburg Central Catholic's comeback came up short against Jeanette. But it's just some great Westmoreland County matchups. You don't know going into the week, how games are going to go. But again, this was certainly one of the best, and that's what we expected. Hempfield and Norwin. Spartans are up. Norwin comes back and wins the game. And as you mentioned, Hempfield now has some work to do to clinch a playoff spot, and that'll start this week against Seneca Valley. But you mentioned Jake Knight. If you look at his overall stats, maybe they don't jump off the page, but if he doesn't do what he did in the second half, Hempfield probably wins the game. 2 interceptions plus a touchdown catch, and he downed a punt at the 2-yard line. Norwin was down 26-14 late in the third quarter when he did it. Evan Pfeiffer hits a big 61-yard punt. Jake downs it at the 2-yard line, and then Steinbeiser gets tackled for a safety, and on the ensuing kick, the ensuing possession, Norwin scores on an 8-yard touchdown run by Tristan Tavares, and at that point, Norwin's still losing, but it's 26-23 as opposed to 26-14. They have all the momentum, and that was just a huge play in the game, downing it at the 2, which, again, went to a safety, and then Norwin scoring. And then, of course, they would end up scoring again and win the game. But little things like that may not show up on the stat sheet, but certainly a huge point in the game. And, of course, congratulations to Dom Dietrich, who is now thrown for a school record 4,316 career yards. Also has 42 touchdowns to go along with that. Just a great kid, and feels so good for him to break that record.
That number might change by a couple of yards, by the way.
Yeah, just true.
Because we know what Nick Kiefer does every week. He always goes back with a fine-tooth comb over his statistics and makes maybe very minor adjustments to it. Dom had another big game, and it's kind of becoming almost the expectation that he's going to throw for 250 or 300 or maybe even 350 yards. The one difference in his stat line, as good as he wasn't quite as efficient. We saw a lot of games where he was maybe only throwing 4 incompletions. I think he threw 14 in this one. And Tristan wasn't prolific, but he did enough to win. And you remember back to that game last year, Flick, where he was clearly not 100%, tried to gut it out, couldn't really play anywhere close to where we were used to seeing. I think he looked and probably felt a little bit better this year, even though he's still not at 100%. And sometimes just that little bit extra makes the difference. And just 2 great quarterbacks. Truly, I think we almost take for granted how good both these guys have been. They're now playing their 4th year of varsity football.
Yeah, really fun. I mean, look, a quarterback's the most important position in all of sports. I guess it can be debated, but that's generally what people feel, and that's I
They
think
get
how.
paid like it. I'll say that much.
Yeah, for sure. So it's fun when you see two quarterbacks at any level that are kind of at the top of their game and their respective level, doing what they're doing. And yeah, it was just fun. Like you mentioned, was Dom, did he have his best game of his career? Did Tristan have his best game? No, but both those guys are competitors, and they both did a lot to try to get their team to win. Norwin comes out of this one. But again, just a fun game to watch. There were a lot of people there. We had a ton of people watching. So again, we live for these type of games, these Westmoreland County games, and it was really interesting to see how it played out.
Yeah, and so just to finish this thought, we talk about what it meant for the Knights. They are now 2-1, so they are tied for third place with Cannon Mac. But if you look at Norwin, at this point, they pretty much should get into the postseason. Remember, they came so close to knocking off North Allegheny. Now the Spartans are 1-3, but they've still got 2 games in front of them that I think if they win both of them, they're going to be just fine. They have Seneca Valley, and then I think the big test, because they should beat Seneca Valley, will be Mount Lebanon. And that's the real question, is can the Blue Devils kind of be the fly in the ointment? But again, I think if we said if Norwin plays like it did against North Allegheny the rest of the way, they'll be fine. I think if the Spartans play like they did this past Friday the rest of the way, they might win those 2 games. So I do think that there's a decent chance we get both of these teams in the 6A bracket. One thing that is pretty safe to say at this point, we're probably going to see Penn Trafford in the Class 5A bracket. That looked like maybe it'd be teetering a little bit, at least through the first half on Friday night, but they rallied to win 33-23 against Gateway in Harrison City in the Battle of the Bell. And it was pretty stunning, I would say. Like, we were there together, how the game unfolded in the first half. SJ Moorfield was just uncoverable. The Gateway receiver finished with 13 grabs, 176 yards, 2 touchdowns. I also think the Gators were winning the battle of the trenches more times than not. And then Penn Trafford was so mistake prone, but it looked like a completely different story in the second half. Ben Grabowski was a big part of it. They ultimately get a 10-point win. They get the bell for another year, which is maybe the greatest prize of them all.
And Sean Benjamin got to ring it after the game, which was a big prize for him.
And we got yelled at for doing that, by the way. But that's okay. It was worth it. Ultimately, if they had lost this game, you wonder, could the season spiral? Because then they would have 2 conference losses. Now I think they're still in a pretty good spot. Woodland Hills is likely going to win the section championship, but this was a must win for Penn Trafford to get to the goals. And I think the significance of it cannot be understated.
And the thought going in was like, hey, Penn Trafford takes care of business. If they don't make mistakes, they're going to come out of this one with a victory. Well, Gateway had other thoughts in mind. You mentioned just the way that they were able to hit those big plays, and it just looked like a Jekyll and Hyde type of first and second half with Penn Trafford. But I will give you a name that certainly lifted Penn Trafford to the win, and that was Ben Grabowski, of course. Ben Grabowski. I was talking with someone at halftime, and I think you and Sean mentioned this on maybe in the first half, just how we really didn't see Ben making the impact that he did his freshman year, and have those splash plays as often as he did when he was healthy his freshman year. Of course, last year he was not healthy. And we thought maybe he was banged up a bit this year. Maybe that's why we haven't seen that burst from him. Maybe that's why that we haven't seen those big plays from him. And I had that conversation with someone in the press box at halftime, and look what happened in the second half. Early in the second half, Grabowski goes for a long touchdown. He scores another one. And I'm like, there he is. There's Ben. And, I don't want to necessarily say that, Penn Trafford goes as he goes. But, hey, I know they have some other weapons, but Ben is their main weapon. They need him to be like that in order to make a run, towards the end of the regular season here and then into the playoffs. Yakimelli obviously had a big game a couple of weeks ago. We've seen Desmond be able to throw the ball effectively this year. But you need to be clicking on all cylinders. And, man, that was vintage Ben Grabowski. And hopefully, he's maybe, I don't want to say rediscovered himself, but certainly rediscovered that burst that makes him so good.
Well, here's what's notable. So he was awesome the first game of the season against Norwin. And then I believe the second game, he got banged up. He did not play in their third game of the season against Moon. And then when he played against Woodland Hills, he was okay, but he didn't look like that same player. And then even just last week against Plum, a game that they won, it was mostly Cody Yakimelli who was doing the heavy lifting, and Grabowski just wasn't putting up big numbers. They didn't need him to, neither in that game nor the blowout win against Kiskari, but they needed him against Gateway in the second half, and he delivered. So I think you're right. Maybe a turning point for him and for the Warriors offensively. They obviously have to clean up stuff. But here's one other big thing. Does any coach that we talk to stress special teams more than John Ruane?
No, I don't think so. He's always been that.
Nico Casciato, 89-yard kickoff return touchdown. Those were their only points in the first half. If he doesn't do that, they might not have a chance to come back because the game might have already been decided at halftime.
Yeah, that was a big run back, and they're down 23-7 at halftime. You don't realize how important that touchdown was until the end of the game. And that kind of kept them within striking distance. And you mentioned John Ruane. Yeah, I mean, they've always been really good in special teams, whether it be those surprise onside kicks or kick returns. And then when they have special teams breakdowns like they did against Woodland Hills, against Scoop Smith, go figure. I know he was really upset about it. He stressed it going into the game, like you mentioned, I think, a couple of weeks ago. And I'm sure he took that to heart. So it was great to see, Penn Trafford's perspective, their special teams really coming up with some big plays.
Well, a team that made plenty of big plays last Friday, the Jeanette Jayhawks, and they win their rivalry matchup against Greensburg Central Catholic 37-22, despite the best efforts of Samir Crosby. This was fascinating. One, because for Jeanette, we didn't know if Jace Powell would play, or if he played, how good he would be. On the other side, there was a bunch of guys, including Samir Crosby, who are question marks for GCC. He played. He was maybe the best player in all of Westmoreland County this past week, and yet it still wasn't enough. A massive win for the Jayhawks. And for GCC, it's tough because they are, sitting in a tough spot right now in the Eastern Conference, but maybe they found something in that second half. They kind of did a swap. Samir Crosby goes back to quarterback. Bobby Smith-Noski, who I don't even know if had he been playing receiver whatsoever, he plays receiver and has almost 100 yards receiving. So I don't know if that's what they're going to stick with the rest of the way, but they showed some real fight and some firepower. And we knew all along Jeanette had plenty of firepower, and it came on full display.
Yeah, Kimani Brown was awesome. 286 all-purpose yards, couple of touchdowns rushing, couple of touchdowns through the air. But it was interesting, we've been talking about this, I feel like almost every show, about, whether Smith-Noski would stay at quarterback and whether Samir would, stay at receiver, or I didn't think the two would swap. I thought Samir, would just move to quarterback and Smith-Noski would whatever, play running back or whatever. But again, when they really, really, really need it, your best option right now is Samir Crosby at quarterback. I think the game against Clairton, it got so out of hand early that it made no sense to put Samir there. But with this one, I think GCC knew that it still had a shot at least, to come back in the game. So, let's get Samir in at quarterback. And I understand why they didn't want to have him there all season, I guess, want to keep the wear and tear off of him and that type of thing, and try to make the offense have a little bit more depth to it. But again, when the bullets are flying, when you're down, you think you have a chance to come back. That's when you go to Samir, and, man, he was great in the second half, put on a show. It wasn't enough for Greensburg Central Catholic, but pretty cool to see, too. Kimani Brown, Samir Crosby, they used to be teammates growing up in Jeanette. I almost feel like we've been robbed a little bit. I'd love to see them on the same sideline, on the same side of the field.
Well, here's the question. Would Kimani be the quarterback and Samir receiver in that scenario? Or would Samir be the quarterback? And remember last year, they tried at Jeanette to make Kimani Brown a receiver.
Yeah, it would have been a good problem to have, I'm sure, for Tommy Pallone.
They just alternate every play, maybe.
Yeah, every other play they alternate. That wouldn't be confusing at all. But that would keep the defense on their toes. But unfortunately, this is all in theory because it never happened. But it pretty cool though. I mean, those two have a lot of respect for one another. Reading some of their quotes afterwards, and I would imagine this will be the last battle between them on the football field. But
who knows?
Could they play in the playoffs again? We'll see.
Yeah, and of course, they have had some good battles on the hardwood as well. We're going to hear from Jeanette's head coach, Thomas Pallone, in just a bit. Final big story from this past week. Well, we talk about games that came down to the wire, big rallies. Bell Vernon area, really for the second time in as many weeks, just had a heartbreaking loss. This time at Chartiers Valley, 36-35. It was a record-setting performance for Chase Petrosky for the Leopards. We'll mention specifics later, but he set a single-game rushing mark. Ultimately, though, Char Valley got a touchdown and 2-point conversion to win it in the final seconds. Luke Miranda to Tayshawn Lewis for that 2-point conversion. And for Scott Breyer, it's got to be so frustrating. You came so close to knocking off Thomas Jefferson. You had the Colts on the ropes, and then in the final seconds, it slips away. So now they're 0-2 in the conference. They could easily be 2-0 and be one of the hottest teams in Class 4A, but unfortunately for them, so close, but it must feel like so far away.
And another big mistake in the game, 96-yard touchdown on a fumble return for Chartiers Valley in that game. So, if you plunge it in there and score, maybe that changes the game. And then you mentioned, Sean, that 2-point conversion. I was watching back to it. It was either a shovel pass or an option pitch, whatever you want to say. And Bell Vernon nearly was there in position to make the tackle and win the game, but they were not able to do so. Obviously, Chartiers Valley just going for the win right there after getting the touchdown to put them behind by 1 instead of kicking the extra point. Man, Chase Petrosky had that 17-yard touchdown run to put Bell Vernon ahead late before the touchdown pass and the 2-point conversion, and he was just an absolute beast, a star all night long. And he actually broke the record of someone that I played against, Kalsovic, for Bell Vernon, and I'll never forget that name. There were a few names back then in the early 2000s. I think Bell Vernon played in the Whitfield Championship a couple of times, at least one time in that stretch with guys like Aaron Krebs and Kalsovic and McClintock and Gill, and I remember all the names.
Did he
there.
set the record against you by chance, Stan?
That wouldn't surprise me, because here's the thing. Obviously playing for Derry, we were actually pretty good that year. I think it was 2000 or 2001. But Bell Vernon was like in a different stratosphere. I remember playing them, and they were physical. So back then, not a ton of schools had turf. I mean, some did. Bell Vernon has the turf. They have music blasting.
It wasn't gold back then.
It was not. It was not the beach. It was just regular turf. Music blasting, which is very intimidating. It was an intimidating game, intimidating team, and an atmosphere that we played in. Anyway, but Kalsovic was awesome. I certainly remember going up against him, and to see Petrosky break his record was pretty cool. And if Bell Vernon wins the game, I think we have a big discussion. Whether we have Antonio Perkins or Chase Petrosky as our player of the week. But we do try to have that kind of be the tiebreaker if you win or lose. So certainly nothing against him, though. I mean, he was tremendous, and yeah, it just stings for Bell Vernon, like you said, Sean. 2 straight conference losses, 4-point loss to TJ, 1-point loss to Chartiers.
I don't know how much consolation this is. I'm willing to say that they are the best 1-5 team in the WPI.
Yeah, I'll go along with that for sure.
I mean, they were competitive against McKeesport as well. Keep in mind, they also played Aliquippa. So it might get easier from here on out. That said, they're probably going to have to win their final 3 games. And of course, Trinity's not going to be an easy matchup. Trinity, by the way, I don't know if you saw, they knocked off Thomas Jefferson this past week. So.
Well, and if Bell Vernon can get into the playoffs, they're probably one of those teams that you don't want to see, right? Like, we don't want to see Bell Vernon because they still do have kids with that experience, to be in the postseason, and certainly, they're playing pretty good football right now, just not getting the wins.
Yeah, 1 play away, I think, at this point from being a much different season for the Leopards. That'll do it for our biggest stories from this past week. When we come back, we will run down all the scores from across Westmoreland County, and a little bit later, we will have our plays of the week, as well as Thomas Pallone and Antonio Perkins, and a look ahead at this upcoming weekend with the Week 7 preview. That's all upcoming right here on Westmoreland on the Gridiron, and it's powered by Bowser.
Game day or any day, the power of Bowser is here to get you where you need to go. From the latest Hyundai, Nissan, Subaru, Chevrolet, GMC, Buick, and Genesis models to quality pre-owned vehicles, Bowser has the perfect lineup for your drive. Look for a winning deal. Bowser's got the plays, great financing, top trade-in values, and a selection that's always in season. From the first whistle to the final buzzer, Bowser Automotive is your hometown MVP. Bowser Automotive, Route 51 South on top of the hill. PowerofBowser.com.
You can't count all the ways you take care of your family in a single busy day. But knowing you made a difference in their lives is all the reward you need. At EHN Neighborhood Hospitals, that's what motivates us too. Whether it's our loved ones or yours.
We continue here on Westmoreland on the Gridiron. You know when and where to find us. 7 p.m. Wednesdays on the Westmoreland Sports Network. Sean and Flick here. We already talked about some of the biggest stories from this past week. Let's now look at the rest of the scores from week 6 of the high school football season. You can go back and watch and listen to several of these, including Norwin's 33-26 thriller against Hempfield area, as well as Penn Trafford's 33-23 victory against Gateway. You might not want to go back and watch this one if you're a fan of Derry area. The Trojans blown out 56-7 at Elizabeth Forward. The best thing to come from this, Flick, I would say, is your brother's video recap that he had. That was a fun one. Yeah.
He had some Halloween decorations in the background. I guess he just...
Now, was that at midfield at Elizabeth Forward's field?
No, it was near the field, near the high school. He just went in front of someone's house and started recording. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, I don't know. there was some good decorations in the background. Which, by the way, I don't have any
up yet. Recap. I will say that it was going to be tough no matter where you did that recap.
It was very spooky for Derry.
I was honestly surprised because I thought that they really hung with Southmoreland. Now they struggled in some major aspects. They couldn't throw the football against the Scotties, but I did not see that. And in 56-7, honestly, might have even been closer than the game felt. I mean, it was a blowout from the get-go. So tough one for Mike Arone. We'll see if they can bounce back. I don't think there's any doubt right now, as good as Southmoreland has been, EF is still probably the favorite in that 3A Interstate Conference. Jeanette 37, Greensburg Central Catholic 22. You can go back and watch that one as well. Now, this was an interesting one, and we have it on audio with Jonathan Whaley. Franklin Regional gets its first win of the season, 21-10 against Fox Chapel. A lot to unpack here for a game between two teams that are not particularly good. First one of the season for FR, and it was their backup quarterback, Jake Puchka, who led the way. That is a familiar last name if you followed Franklin Regional girls basketball. Bernie Puchka. He threw for 148 yards and a touchdown. But on the other side, we had history. The longest field goal in WPIAL history, Heron Zurikat, who is a Georgia commit. I don't think it's a surprise that he's the guy who broke the record. 57-yarder, previous record that had been established about 25 years ago and then tied, I think, a couple times over the past few years, had been 55. So he's cleared that. Wouldn't be surprised if he gets another one, maybe to surpass his own record. But congrats to FR, its first win of 2025. Kiski area 34-13 over Greater Latrobe. Landon Artman, 5 touchdowns for the Cavaliers. They've now won 2 in a row, maybe getting back in the discussion for the postseason. We just talked about Chartiers Valley's 36-35 victory against the Bell Vernon area Leopards. Southmoreland, still perfect, 41-0 in favor of the Scotties over the York Cougars. Cool thing about that one, the return home for Dustin Choate, the legendary York player. And I'm sure he had some good memories going back to Cougar Mountain, but he also had plenty to cheer about on Friday, the way the Scotties performed. Jackson Mickens, 4 carries for over 100 yards and a couple of scores. Mount Pleasant 42, Greensburg Salem 29. Stephen Credina had 141 yards. Brady Brooks, a 55-yard touchdown reception and a 63-yard touchdown run. So he's becoming a real big play threat for Jason Fazekas. Burrow 41, Valley 21. We will hear from the star quarterback for the Buccaneers, Antonio Perkins. The interesting thing, Flick, and I've mentioned this before, a year ago he was on the other side in the battle of the bypass, which, by the way, I don't really understand what we know the victory bell, like there's a tangible thing that Penn Trafford gets. My understanding is no one from New Kensington or Arnold can use the bypass for the next year. Is that how we should take it?
Yes, I believe so. I don't know how they check that. License plates maybe or something. I don't know.
Gas mileage is going to be very poor for those people from New Kensington. Char Houston 37, Monessen 18. Ligonier Valley gets its first victory, and the Rams did so in emphatic fashion, 67-13, knocking off Charleroi in a non-conference. And how about this stunner in the college ranks? Seton Hill 16, 6th ranked Cal U 7. The first ever college start at quarterback for Darian Carter went pretty well, I would say. Only threw for 71 yards, but he rushed for 97 and a touchdown. The defense was great. Kyron Craigett had a long touchdown late to seal the victory. I would say, and you've been around longer than I have, this is probably one of the top 2 victories, maybe all time in program history.
I would say, I definitely say top 5. So I don't know how long ago this was. Let's say 8 years ago, they beat Slippery Rock at home. And a similar situation, they were ranked top 10, top 5, and they beat Slippery Rock at home. That was massive. Obviously, they won a playoff game, if you remember.
Was back in 2008?
I don't know why I should say if you remember. Obviously, we weren't broadcasting games back then, but yes, we remember that they did.
You know who does remember that?
What's that?
You know who does remember that is my broadcast partner on Friday.
Yes. Dan Day knows it well. He was a player. But anyway, but either way, that certainly was one of the best victories in program history. I mean, we talked earlier this year, the win against West Liberty, one of the cleanest I've ever seen. This was unbelievable, honestly. And I texted our colleague who coaches at Seton Hill and broadcasts for us, John Bainbridge, and I said, wow. And he said, are you surprised? Of course, the coaches are going to say that they always believe they can win, but defensively, they were just unbelievable. And I think a big factor into the game, Sean, was, Darian Carter gets the start. I doubt Cal knew that he was starting, so they probably didn't game plan for him. And when you don't game plan for a running quarterback, I think that makes it difficult. And I also think it created more room to run for Craigett, who's been a little bit quiet this year. He hasn't really gotten on track, and he's one of the best running backs in the PSAC. But I think a running quarterback that the opposing defense wasn't ready for helped Craigett also be able to run the ball more effectively. And, Seton Hill, whatever way they had to do it, they did it, and they got the win. What a big victory.
And fortunately for them, they've got a cakewalk this week because it's only Slippery Rock that comes to Greensboro.
Yeah, so that's all. And Slippery Rock's not upset or anything, and they just got upset by Gannon. So they are going to be upset and mad coming into this game. So we'll see what happens.
Also on the college ranks, St. Vincent falls against Case Western Reserve 42-14. So the Bearcats sputtering a bit. Let's take a look at the top performers from this past week. This is the top passer, rusher, and receiver in the entire WPIAL or Western Pennsylvania, because I think we had a Albert Gallatin Colonial mixed in at one point, and then several notable from Westmoreland County. The top passer going for 379 yards, Joey Flitsky of North Catholic. He's been doing some big things this season for the Trojans. Not that far behind Hempfield area's QB Dom Dietrich, 21 of 35 for 319. Landon Artman, who threw those 5 touchdowns for Kiski area, goes for 273. Brody Chismar of Greensburg-Salem, 13 of 23 for 255 yards. Jake Puchka of Franklin Regional goes 9 of 15 for 148. And Kimani Brown of Jeanette, 144 yards through the air. The top rusher across the entire WPIAL, it is Bell Vernon area's own Chase Petrosky, 339 yards, establishing a new single-game record in Leopards history. A quarterback behind him, Antonio Perkins of Burrowville. We'll hear from him in just a bit. 303 yards rushing. Samir Crosby, also a quarterback, at least for half the game. He goes for 211 on the ground. Giovanni Rotroff of Norwin, 193. And Burrow Trey Corey, 159. So two running backs combining for about 460 yards for the Buccaneers. That usually is a winning recipe, perhaps why they scored 41 points in the win. The top receiver this past week, a name we're familiar with, Scoop Smith of Woodland Hills, 11 grabs, 226 yards. Jack Kofis of Hempfield, a dozen receptions for 148. Henry Muchler of Hempfield, 6 grabs for 147. Bobby Smith-Noski, who started the game at quarterback, he hauls in 4 grabs for 96. And a couple of Greensburg-Salem Golden Lions. Max Topper, 95 yards, and Tyrese Lewis, 90 yards receiving. That'll do it from the top performers from this past week. We will take a break, but when we come back, you have to stick around. Another jam-packed episode of Plays of the Week. That's as we continue right here on Westmoreland on the Gridiron. It's powered by Bowser.
Some moments on the field go beyond the game. They shape who we become. At Home Team Collections, we honor those moments with the care and craftsmanship they deserve. Because these moments aren't just memories, they're a legacy worth preserving. Any team, any sport, any logo. Visit HomeTeamCollections.com today and save $10 off your first order.
The Collision Shop by Jason Mignone is your one-stop shop for all things auto body repair. Our experienced technicians and state-of-the-art facilities have you covered on both passenger and heavy-duty vehicle repairs, including scratches, scrapes, and dents, free estimates, body repairs, welding, refinishing, glass replacement, and more. Our all-new alignment and calibration shop has the tooling, equipment, and staffing to ensure top-quality alignment and calibration adjustments for your vehicle. Our friendly office staff is more than happy to assist you through every step of your vehicle's repair process. Visit the Collision Shop by Jason.com for our complete list of services.
As we continue here on Westmoreland on the Gridiron, it is now time for my favorite segment, Flick's favorite segment, everybody's favorite segment. It is now Plays of the Week. And Flick, we got 6 to get to here tonight, so let's jump right in. That is 6. Yes, it is. And we begin with Norwin, and 6 points came off of this one because Giovanni Rotroff's incredible season continued on Friday against the Spartans, highlighted by this unbelievable run late in the first quarter to put Norwin in the lead, with Dave Franzak and Brian Brzezinski detailing that score.
But just trying to make positive yards off the off coverage.
Handoff goes to Rotroff. Again has a hold of the 40. Keeps moving. 50, 40, 30, 20. Has one man to beat. Gets out of the ankle tackle and into the end zone.
I tell you what, some people might question G's ability to have breakaway speed. Well, that just got answered right there because son of a gun, the little bowling ball is able to go ahead and withstand any type of contact right there and keep his feet not only inbounds, but outrun the second defender and get it into the pylon. Great run by G. Rotroff right there.
67 yards on the carry.
One of many big plays in the game, and there you go. Gio Rotroff with a massive one, was one of my special guests this year, actually last week, on Westmoreland on the Gridiron. And, man, those guys up front for Norwin, they continue to kick some butt, and Gio breaks a big one right there.
Well, we'll continue Plays of the Week in that very same game on the Hempfield side of things because the Spartans had an answer in the third quarter. Anthony Corello produced a defensive score that put the Spartans back in the lead, once again with Dave and Brian captioning that video.
To throw, and again down the seam, it's tipped up and intercepted. Open field for Corello. Touchdown.
Yeah, and so, you know, as we talked about previous, it was nice the first time that Tristan was able to go ahead and make that pass to Josh Leonard, putting her on kind of right where he thought he was going to be. And unfortunately, that time had a little bit more coverage than what he could squeeze it into, resulting in the pick six.
A 30-yard pick six.
Well, at the time, Sean, that was a gigantic play for Hempfield. If they win the game, you know, we talked about Jake Knight doing a couple of little things, the interceptions, downing the punt. That would have been looked at as one of the biggest plays of the game. Not only did he intercept it, he had to tip it to himself, picked it off, ran it back for a touchdown. Great stuff there. Hempfield defense coming up with a huge play. And again, if the Spartans were able to win that game, you have to look back at that play. Unfortunately for them, they weren't able to do so.
Anthony Carello certainly deserves full marks for that. Ultimately, it wasn't quite. We continue plays of the week with Penn Trafford and the Warriors. They overcame a big halftime deficit against Gateway. Ben Grabowski was probably the biggest catalyst in that comeback. Powerful run set the tone in the second half. And as a bonus, I love bonuses, the Warriors also got tricky on a 2-point conversion with myself and Sean Benjamin calling the sequence.
That's 42. Hand off to Grabowski. And he shows some strength, and he's still on his feet. Grabowski cuts it back, trying to go the distance, and he will. 58 yards for Ben Grabowski.
Right on cue, didn't lose a step. He did. Ben Grabowski with a nice job taking it to the outside. Had a couple guys trying to go for the football, but he was able to break past and go the distance for the 6. You look here, guys trying to make the tackle. Someone tried to go for the football there, missed. Good cutback. And the Warriors get the 6. Much needed here to start the second half. And they're going for 2.
This would make it a 1-possession game.
Number 5 back in the game.
That's Giacomelli. He's got 3 receivers to his right. He's going to jump pass, and it's caught by Briggs. Channeling his Tim Tebow. Giacomelli to Briggs for 2.
Ben Grabowski, just like that, gets right back on track. Huge play early on in the third quarter to turn the momentum Penn Trafford's way. And then that 2-point conversion, Sean, the one thing that got cut off there was Sean Benjamin talking about the first thing that it reminded him. By the way, I had to tell him behind the scenes, I was like, Sean, that reminded me of the state championship game in which Penn Trafford beat Imhotep on, they didn't beat him on the jump pass, but it was one of the big plays in the game, late in the game. Conlon Green, with the jump pass. Tim Tebow, Conlon Green, both big dudes. And right there, Giacomelli not quite as big, but that was a huge 2-point conversion for the Warriors.
Yeah, ultimately, that I think was the play that sparked them back in that game. Jeanette is next for plays of the week, and it was the Jayhawks night in the rivalry matchup against Greensburg Central Catholic, and it did not take long for the home team to take that lead. Keimani Brown and Xavier Odorizio Ferro hooked up on a spectacular score just over 2 minutes in, with Brent Wiggum and Anthony D'Annunzio highlighting that connection.
Does look like they're lined up going for it, though, as he's going to look near side. Now goes back far side. Feels some pressure. Slides away from it. Now needs to find some room to be able to throw it. He is going to find the room. Ball downfield, and it is caught, and it is going to be a touchdown. Jayhawks on the board as Keimani Brown scrambles for his life and finds the receiver open for a touchdown on the far side of the field.
Xavier Odorizio Ferro found his way behind the secondary, came down with the football. Keimani Brown running, was being chased in the backfield by James Bodeye. Keimani ran about 35 yards, maybe 40 yards before he got rid of the football, found XOF at about the 10-yard line and into the end zone for the score.
XOF seems to have a flair for the dramatic, huh? After the big dunk in the basketball playoffs last year, he comes up with a jumping catch there, and Keimani did a great job keeping that alive. The Greensburg Central Catholic defensive back almost came down with a nice interception there as well, just snuck by him. And that made the catch maybe even harder for the guy they call, or at least Brent calls him, XOF, to make the catch.
I'm wondering, we're going to hear from Thomas Sloan, I'm wondering throughout that entire sequence, he's probably saying, no. Yes. Because that looked like it was going to be disastrous a few times for Jeanette. But big-time player made a big-time play. Really two guys that were big in that victory. Well, we'll continue plays week with Greensburg Central Catholic, and although his team came up short, Samir Crosby did everything in his power to keep the Centurions in the game, beginning with an 80-yard run just moments after Jeanette's first score. Once again, it's Brent and Anthony on the call.
Justin Sanders, the lone safety right now. At the beginning of the season, Powell and Hunter Schaefer were the safeties. They are both hurt. Here comes Crosby. Look at him. He does not let the first, second, third guy go. And Samir Crosby is not going to be caught once he finds the open field. How about an 80-yard touchdown run? Samir Crosby's back, and he puts the GCC Centurions on the board.
Such a pivotal piece of the puzzle for the Centurions is Samir Crosby. Getting the football in his hands is always something that you have to be aware of if you're the defenders. And that time the Jayhawks saw it, but they didn't get to see it for very long because Samir took off 80 yards into the end zone. 6 points for the Centurions.
Think that'll make up for the fumble, huh?
Absolutely.
Samir Crosby banged up 2 weeks ago against Brentwood. Did not play last week against Riverview, but he is off and running here tonight after that 80-yard touchdown.
Well, after Jeanette scored their first touchdown, Greensburg Central Catholic scored at 7-7 right off the bat. Just a couple minutes into the game, you knew it was going to be one of those types of games. The Jayhawks did a nice job, again, building up that lead at halftime. But nice to see Samir Crosby put another highlight reel play together. Of course, he did in the second half as well, and doing it against his former teammates.
Absolutely. That was a great game. Some really high-skilled performances. We conclude Plays of the Week with Greensburg Salem and Brody Chismar. He was special in a loss against Mount Pleasant area. He managed to keep a play alive that really looked doomed from the start. And miraculously, he then connected with Jackson Stevie for a highlight touchdown.
That was absolutely amazing. Chismar gave up so much ground there, stayed alive. He went south, then went north, and somehow he's able to get the ball away and get a touchdown. Now, I know there's no commentators there. We did not broadcast that game on WSN, but it was sent in to us, and I'm like, we got to use it. We got to include this in Plays of the Week because it was, as you could see, it was awesome. So, Peyton, that one's for you, man.
Yeah, well, that's, a guy that they absolutely need. And remember that he did not play the prior week, but when he has played, Chismar's been one of the best guys at the quarterback position in Westmoreland County this season. That shows why. That is a pretty special play there in the loss against Mount Pleasant. That'll do it for Plays of the Week. When we come back, I will talk to the head man of the Jeanette Jayhawks. He is riding high after that victory against Greensburg Central Catholic, Thomas Pallone. And then after that, we will hear from our Player of the Week, Borough quarterback, Antonio Perkins, right here on Westmoreland on the Gridiron. It's powered by Bowser.
Play It Again Sports in Greensburg is your locally owned and operated sporting goods store. We set ourselves apart by offering a wide variety of both new and used equipment at competitive prices. Located in the Greengate East Plaza, below Walmart, Play It Again Sports' knowledgeable staff will help you and your family prepare for every athletic season. Whether you're looking to buy, sell, or trade, we are here as your one-stop shop. At Play It Again Sports in Greensburg, everybody plays.
Along the arc of a woman's life, there are many passages. Growing up, chasing dreams, building a career, embracing wisdom born of experience. There are times that make good health and well-being so vital. We provide care that helps women thrive at any age, at any stage. Independence Health System. Expert care here.
We continue here on Westmoreland on the Gridiron. Sean Myers now joined by the head coach of the Jeanette Jayhawks, Thomas Pallone. His team coming off of a big victory, a rivalry showdown against GCC that the Jayhawks prevailed in 37-22. And so first off, Thomas, congrats. I know just based on your post-game comments alone how much that means to you. Why is knocking off GCC so important for Jeanette?
Just the rivalry and the history between the schools, I think. I think it's one of the best rivalries in Westmoreland County going, just given the history of the game and, given the most recent, things that went on between the two schools, I think, added to that. And, it's, like I said, growing up Jeanette, you always want to go out there and beat Gridiron Central Catholic. And AJ Graves was in the Hall of Fame for us this weekend. And, I just remember him and Coach Murph coming back from like 17-0, being down at Central, taking it back 98 yards, fumble recovery. So like, there's just a long history, and just means so much to our guys in our community.
I know a lot of coaches, they kind of go with the I don't want to say disingenuous approach that every game's the same, but I think we realize that not every game is necessarily the same. It didn't seem like you shied away from it afterwards. I would presume even before the game, you talked about how important this was with your players. Is that approach that you and your team embrace, saying that it's not another game on the schedule?
Yeah, I think what's important, you're right. Like, I think coaches are full of crap when they say that about rivals, but that's just my personal opinion. But our team goals, we filled out the goal sheet before the season, and one of those, were beat GCC, just because, like I said, they know the importance of the game. But do we prepare any differently? No, we don't. We prepare the same every week. We put in a ton of hours on the weekend to make sure we're ready for a Monday practice. So I think that's where the lines get crossed. I think, of course we prepare, we know GCC well just because we played them twice last year, and it's a game that we want to win. So we do an off-season study on them, as we do Clarendon, right? And you saw that worked out 57-0. So, we know the big games that are on our schedule we need to win, and Central's one of them every year.
Well, it was even more important, not just because of the rivalry and the history, but your team needed a win. You were on the heels of a couple of tough losses. You mentioned the one against the Bears, but also that game against Leechburg. So you did not want to suffer your third straight loss. Now, I know your team did that last year and came out the other side and seemingly was better for it. But just in terms of the overall season and the goals for where you want to get, how big was that win to snap that skid?
Yeah, huge. I think we had a staff meeting. We didn't bring the kids in after that Clarendon loss and just hit the reset button, because we didn't, like you mentioned, we did not want to go on that 3-game skid. Now, knowing, that we still went on a run last year. That was last year, right? We did not want to go 3 in a row again and beg for an at-large bid, which we did last year. So, it was huge, getting that Eastern Conference win, like you mentioned.
So you opened the season, first half against Mount Pleasant, your team was humming, and then things kind of unraveled. The Vikings came back a dominant second half by them to win that game. And then you got 3 victories before that back-to-back losing streak that we mentioned. So it's a little bit of an up and down season, I would imagine, so far for a team that was looking to build off of a really good 2024. How have you evaluated how this season's gone to this point?
Sure. I think, we're still growing and learning who we are, identity as an offense, as a defense. And, we got a lot of good contributions on special teams. I think, what people didn't realize, we finished 4th in the Eastern A Conference last year, right? And then we went on our run. We understand that, we went to the semi and it was an expectation of this year, but, we still had a lot of work to do to try to become a conference champion this year. And, I guess we're still mathematically in that conversation, but, we know that Clarendon's out ahead now that they beat us, and we don't control our own destiny. But, I think we're right where we need to be. Of course, one of our team goals was to go undefeated, and, we haven't done that and win a conference title. And I think we're on the outside looking in for that. So that's 2 of the goals that we show in our presentation on Mondays that are crossed off. But, again, we highlight the, beat GCC in green and make the playoffs is still unhighlighted, and home playoff game is still unhighlighted, and WBIL is still unhighlighted, and PIAA is still unhighlighted. So those are all goals that we can get. So, as far as where we're at right now, yeah, of course, we'd like to be in a little bit better position for a conference crown, but, we can't go backwards. We just go forward.
One of the I think interesting aspects of some of the games this week, not just Jeanette, GCC, we saw it with Hempfield, Norwin as well. Guys who maybe would miss another game at a different point in time found a way to suit up because of the significance, both the rivalry and the postseason implications. Jace Powell was a guy who was banged up previously. He found a way to not only suit up, but make contributions. What did that say about him, and how did you evaluate how he performed, albeit I'm sure less than 100%?
Yeah, warrior mentality. It was pretty scary throughout the week just because we didn't know. He didn't look great, even Wednesday. With moving around, we put a scheme in where he could be more stationary. We didn't pull that out against Central. We didn't need it. But, we were just thinking, how good is he? How available is he if he's going to be available? And he wasn't out there on defense, when Central came out and had their long run and, that we had 5 missed tackles, a lot of young guys. So, we didn't know how available he was, and he's just a warrior for going out there and competing the way he did.
Talking to Thomas Plone, the head coach of the Jeanette Jayhawks. So you mentioned you had to utilize Powell a little bit differently. On the other side, Samir Crosby plays 2 roles that are completely different than what we've seen from him this year, both offensively, going back to quarterback, and then shifting more to linebacker on defense. How do you, as a head coach, along with your staff, make adjustments on the fly when the opponent does something maybe you didn't anticipate?
Sure. We practiced all week to have Samir quarterback. We felt, he's the conference player of the year. And, that was a significant game for Central. So you always put yourself in the mind of JT Thompson, who's a great coach, and he's a great defensive mind. So we knew we'd see him. We thought maybe we'd be in the Wildcat early for them. I think he came out second half more the quarterback role and just did a lot of Samir things. But, obviously he was hurt and went to the Riverview game the week before. He was in street clothes. So again, these kids are resilient, including Samir. The guys that suit up hurt, that's a choice. And it's really impressive to see it, just as a football guy and a guy who loves, to coach kids.
Well, they had a pretty good quarterback, but fortunately for you, you had a pretty good one on your side as well. Kimani Brown, who we've talked about quite a bit. We've obviously featured him on this show a few weeks ago. How does he continue to make plays with his arm and his leg every single week, now knowing that for 2 years straight, number one goal of most opponents is to try to limit him?
Yeah, we see some wild stuff too, what defenses try to do to contain him, which has been the challenge this year, by the way. It's just, opponents are coming at him differently, just like you said. Everybody knows about him now. Everybody knows that you stop Kimani, you kind of stop our offense, or at least we have to go a different routes. So, he's just a special player. I can't say enough about Kimani the last 4 years, spending the time that we have together, as far as, him being our team leader and our quarterback. Just an impressive young man. And man, is he came out there and he wanted, he said in preseason he had this one circle too, and he would tell you that he wants to beat Central at home his senior year. So he went out there and stood by his word.
I will ask about Brentwood momentarily, because that's another big test upcoming. But I want to kind of shift away from Jeanette a little bit. You are a young coach, but you've already developed a little bit of a coaching tree, because Dustin Schoaf, who was an assistant last year, is doing some incredible things with the Southmoreland Scotties. He is still unblemished as their head coach. Have you been paying attention to those scores a little bit?
Yeah, I have. I talk to Schoaf almost every week, and it has everything to do with who he is as a person, and not my coaching tree, quote, air quotes. But he's a great person. I miss him on the staff. I know our staff misses him. I know he learned a lot with us last year, just utilizing on, who he had available. He didn't go into a great situation, right, with all the noise and fires that happened with, the quarterback that transferred out and that other young man transferring out midseason. Those are all unfortunate things, and unfortunately we've been a part of too over here at Jeanette. So, he's doing a fine job. He has a great staff around him, and he's just a great person. I'm so happy for him and the Southmoreland community and on what's happening over there this season.
Schoaf went back to York this past week and got a victory. I have to wonder, maybe next year we could see Southmoreland and Jeanette. That'd be a cool little storyline, in addition to a pretty good matchup. So I mentioned Brentwood. The Spartans gave you all you could handle a year ago. That had to be one of the most exciting games in all of Westmoreland County in 2024 that the Jayhawks found a way to win in dramatic fashion. So what is the key to win this year, and maybe give you a little bit less stress on the sideline in doing so?
Yeah, it's they had that quarterback back. People don't realize, I think Kimani won like player of the week that week. if we lose that game, that kid wins player of the week. He torched us as far as the air and the ground. It's Cedric Davis Jr., number 13. I'll never forget the name. And scouting them this year again. So look, they have a good coach over there. They got a good program. They just came off a big win, Riverview, at home. So they're flying high. And like we talked about in our Monday meeting, our team meeting, they're pissed off at what happened last year. Who wouldn't be? We stole that game at the end with a 2-point conversion, and we put their playoff hopes in jeopardy then, and they went to a 16 seed, fortunately, and they went to Fort Cherry. So that was the reward for that. But I think that we got a very tall task coming to McKee Stadium. We have to have a great week to make sure we're ready again.
I know you're still relatively young in your head coaching career, but does it feel like this year there's more depth in this conference? Obviously, we know it's still top heavy with Clairton, but it feels like the teams that ultimately will even finish near the bottom of the standings are pretty good teams in their own right, as opposed to kind of the cakewalks that maybe some years have provided.
I'm with you, Sean. Last year we got 5 teams in. This year we could very easily have 5 teams in. Frazier's better. I mean, see it on film. It's crazy. I think we caught them at the right time. I think we played an exceptional game to put up 61 on them. They handed it to Brentwood. Brentwood's a good team. So, and they're in a conversation on a playoff spot. So, we're not used to saying that, Frazier, in the conversation. But I'm with you, Sean. From top to bottom, I don't want to see any of these teams on any week. They come with their own set of problems.
Lastly, I know you said that you're still trying to figure out your identity. It's still a work in progress. To get to the ultimate goals that you've highlighted, what will be some of the biggest keys from here on out for Jeanette?
Sure, just playing our brand of football. I think last week we started getting into that, definitely, with a lot of our offensive schemes and defensive schemes. And part of that is just, there's not a lot of numbers to scrimmage at practice, right? So a lot of our games we're learning. Each week we learn a little bit about ourselves as far as our personnel and our scheme. So, just continue to grow. We grow every week. I have a vase that I keep in my locker now with golf balls in it, and the white golf balls symbolize how many practices we have left, and the color golf balls are all the games that are left. With one yellow ball, that's the most important game. That's the next one. So Brentwood right now is the yellow ball. So every day we have the top performer take a golf ball out, signifying, hey, there's one less opportunity. So, we are standing by that. It's just like get better every day mentality and try to get this thing right for the playoff run that we had last year and beyond.
Thomas, thanks so much for taking the time. Always enjoyed talking to you. Good luck this week and beyond.
Yeah, thanks, Sean.
That is Thomas Pallone, the head coach of the Jeanette Jayhawks. We'll take a break and continue with more right here on the Westmoreland Sports Network.
Bat Pittsburgh East, the area's premier baseball and softball training academy, is now open in Westmoreland County. Our 20,000 square foot state-of-the-art facility features dual fungo man pitching machines, hit tracks enabled cages, and professional bullpens. With private baseball and softball instruction, we're here to help you dominate the diamond. And don't forget to stop into our pro shop, powered by Rawlings and Easton, for the latest gear. DBAT Pittsburgh East, now open in export. Visit dbatpiteast.com.
The prevention of youth and adult substance abuse in our communities is so important, and our goal at CSAE is to do just that. CSAE works to provide education, encourage recovery, and create social change.
Join us at CSAE, because to see the change, you have to be the change.
Welcome back to Westmoreland on the Gridiron. Dan Flickinger back with you, and it is now time to talk with our Week 6 Westmoreland Sports Network Player of the Week. He is sophomore Antonio Perkins from the Burrell Bucks, and what a game he put together against the Valley Vikings last Friday. 303 rushing yards, 4 touchdowns, in that 41-21 victory over Valley. And Antonio, thank you so much. First time we've had a chance to talk. Congratulations on winning our Player of the Week, and thanks for joining us here tonight.
Yes, sir. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Well, let's jump right into it. I got to ask you, what was clicking for you guys so well on offense on Friday to allow not only you, but Trey Corey also to have a big game?
I would just say up front, I mean, our line did a great job on Friday. And also our wide receivers did a great job blocking on the perimeter too.
Is that something the coaches stress with as often as you guys run the ball with the receivers blocking on the perimeter? Is that something that you stress a lot?
Yes, and they've been doing a great job of it.
So I want to jump right into a little bit more about you. You transferred from Valley. Did you have a little extra motivation in this game going up against your former teammates, and kind of what was it like? Was it awkward at all? Was it fun?
It was pretty cool. I mean, getting to play against all my friends. It was a pretty cool experience.
Is there any trash talk out there, or was it pretty clean?
There's always a little talking going on. Always.
Antonio, you scored 4 touchdowns in the game. What one kind of stands out to you? Which one did you like the best? And can you kind of take us through the play?
I would say my last touchdown. I think it was like 57 yards. So it was a design quarterback run. And as soon as I caught the ball, there's a lineman in my face. And I spun off of him, reverse field, and outran everybody and scored.
Now, were most of the rushing attempts you had designed runs or scrambles? Was there some scrambles in there as well?
No, this game we had no scrambles.
Okay.
We run a lot of RPOs and read option plays. So that was most of my runs.
Now, is that something you did last year a lot at Valley, or did you have to learn how to run the option a little bit?
Well, no, I would say we did it a little bit at Valley. Coach Dom Girardi helped me really focus in on that, and he been doing a great job of it.
Now, Trey Corey also had a monster game, ran for $159 and 2 touchdowns. How much harder does it make an opposing defense to try to defend your offense when you have a guy like Trey in the backfield who has a ton of experience and he had a lot of workload last year?
I actually like it. I like it a lot. I mean, when I get going, the defense keys on me, and that opens Trey's up, and vice versa.
So again, you transferred in. Was it tough to get acclimated at all when you transferred into Burrow? What was the process like for you?
I mean, it really wasn't that tough. I mean, it was just a big culture change. It's a little different over there, but I mean that's about it.
Now you have a new head coach. Well, you would have had a new head coach regardless, but Burrow has a new head coach this year. And Coach Girardi, you mentioned him a couple of times. What are some of his best qualities? What do you enjoy most about playing for him?
I mean, I don't know. He's just a great guy, great coach all around. I mean, his game IQ is crazy. Hey, ask him anything, he'll know it.
Well, let's talk about you a little bit. What got you into football? What do you enjoy most about playing football?
I don't know. I enjoy the atmosphere of the games. It really gets me going. And my dad got me into football at a young age.
Is there an NFL or college player that you try to kind of model your game after, or your favorite player in either college or NFL?
I don't know. That's a tough one. I could say I play similar to like Kyler Murray because I'm on the little shorter side.
Well, you play defense too, right? I mean,
yeah.
You go both ways full time?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Anybody on that side of the ball that you kind of tailor your game after?
I don't know. I always loved Troy Polamalu.
Heck yeah, man. Yeah, he was my guy too. I loved watching him play. I wish he was still playing. There's nobody like him, I don't think, in NFL history.
Yeah.
So, how about your favorite sports movie?
Oh, that's a. I would have the Gridiron game.
Yeah. I haven't, the one with The Rock, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I haven't watched that for a while. You never see that on TV, but that was a great movie.
It was. I love that movie.
How about your go-to drink? A sports drink guy, soda, pop, whatever you want to call it.
Gatorade.
Gatorade. Any specific color?
I like blue.
Yeah.
What about you?
I like grape, which is weird because I don't really like grape flavored like candy, but for some reason I like grape. But I do like blue, I like the Riptide, I think Rush it's called.
Yeah.
Something like that. Yeah. So I'm right with you there. Here's an interesting one. I'll leave you with this one. If you were stuck on a desert island with one teammate, who would you bring and why?
That's some of my teammates might get mad at me for this.
That's what we're going to try to put you on the spot, Antonio.
I want to pick Joe Martin.
All right. And why?
I mean, he's just a funny guy. I mean, if I want to be on an island with me and one other person, I'll be with him because he always finds a way to make me laugh.
Just keep it loose.
Yeah.
Keep it loose a little bit. Before I ask you about Highlands, I have to ask you about your wrestling career too. You're a really good wrestler, from what I understand. Wrestling last year at Valley, and now wrestling for a great program in Burrell. I know you're focused on football right now, but how excited are you to wrestle for Burrell as well?
I'm really excited. I mean, I'm just very glad to be a part of a great team, great coaching staff. I don't know, ready to get after it when the time comes.
Well, looking forward to seeing you out there on the mat too. So you guys are in a very important stretch right now. You try to make the WPIAL playoffs starting this week against Highlands. What do you think will be key kind of down the stretch in these last few games to, earn a playoff spot?
Being coachable, I would say. I mean, our coaches put in great game plans, great scripts, everything. I feel like if we follow and do what they say, I mean, we'll be good.
So just executing the plan.
Yes, basically. Sir.
Gotcha. Antonio, this was great. Hey, you're only a sophomore. I'm sure you're going to be player of the week a few more times throughout your career, so we'll get a chance to speak on our show once again coming up here in the future. But good luck the rest of the season, and if not football season, we'll see you on the mat coming up this winter.
Yes, sir. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely, man. That is Antonio Perkins, Burrell sophomore. Again, ran for over 300 yards, 4 touchdowns last week in that victory over Valley. Sean and I will be back with you as we will preview Week 7 games right here on Westmoreland on the Gridiron. All right, buddy.
Thank you. I'll see you.
Looking for the perfect SUV that's stylish, spacious, and fun to drive? The 2025 Volkswagen Tiguan has you covered. With a bold design, advanced safety features, and the latest tech at your fingertips, Tiguan is built to keep up with your busy life. From road trips to daily lives, Tiguan delivers the comfort and performance you deserve at a price that makes sense. Drive the SUV that checks every box. The 2025 Volkswagen Tiguan. Fun, flexible, and ready for anything at Sendell Volkswagen in Greensburg.
Back here for one last segment on Westmoreland on the Gridiron. We appreciate both Thomas Floan and Antonio Perkins for taking the time to talk to us. And now let's take a look at the Week 7 schedule. And Flick, Week 7 means we're getting pretty darn close to the end of the season. So we're going to likely have some teams clinching playoff spots this week. We will probably also have some teams, unfortunately, that are eliminated from playoff contention. And we'll also have teams that are, fighting just to stay alive. There's a lot at stake. You start to really get a clear idea of where teams stand and what they need to do. And that's why I think that the games that we will have in particular on our airwaves are going to be outstanding games, must watch, certainly content. Seneca Valley at Hempfield area is one of those games. And the Raiders are struggling. They're 0-3. The Spartans are 1-3, but I feel like they're in a much better spot. They have a winning record overall. If you think the transitive property exists, Norwin blows out Seneca Valley. Hempfield takes Norwin down to the wire. this should be a Spartans win. It doesn't always work like that, however, but I think Coach Kiefer and everyone at that program understands that they have to win this game.
Yeah, this is really important. I know that those light games are tough. I mean, look at Norman almost beat North Allegheny, and North Allegheny blew out Hempfield. So you just never know. But yeah, I mean, Hempfield, I think they're definitely this is the year that they need to do it, right? They hung in there with Norwin. I know they got kind of blasted by the top two teams in the conference, but now this is the year they have the team. I think they're healthy enough. Certainly, I don't know that they have any big key injuries right now. This is the year where they have to win the games that maybe they're slightly favored in, even if they're not, to make the playoffs. So I think it all starts on Friday night for them.
If there are any injuries, we'll get it on the Friday injury report.
That's right. That was kind of new last week from Coach Kiefer. It was like a last second injury report. Wow, that's great.
And I am very much looking forward to broadcasting this game with the aforementioned Dan Day, who is back for more. He must have done a good enough job first time around, huh?
He did. He did tremendous. And I know how much he cares. I mean, he already talked to you, right, leading up to this game, what do you need from me, that type of thing. But I mean, I've interviewed him many times. You obviously interviewed him many times, so it's pretty cool to work alongside him now.
No doubt. Another Westmoreland County game, maybe not the same luster that it's had in some past years. Penn Trafford at Franklin Regional. The Warriors 2-1 in conference, but they're 6-1 overall. Their only blemish was Woodland Hills. Franklin Regional coming off of its only win of the season. FR is 0-3 in conference. I'll be curious to see who plays quarterback for the Panthers. You would think Puchko would get another crack at it with him having a lot of success last week against the Foxes. Dairy area at Greensburg-Salem, a couple of 0-2 teams in the Class 3A Interstate Conference, but two teams that I think really have a chance for the postseason. I mean, just to be completely honest, York has struggled so much that you figure the Cougars probably are not going to be a contender. That means Dairy area, Greensburg-Salem, and Mount Pleasant are probably fighting for those other spots behind what's probably going to be Elizabeth Ford and Southmoreland. So I think there's a lot at stake here. And a team in Greensburg-Salem that, although it lost last week, it was a really good sign to get Brody Chismar back and have him really firing on all cylinders.
Yeah, and I think both teams look at this game. Not that you don't look at every game and you think you can win or whatever, but this is certainly a very winnable game for both teams, I think. So I think it's going to be a really, really good game. Dairy going to have to find a way to contain Chismar, obviously. Kind of got on track last week, and so we'll see what happens at Offutt Field.
And I'm sure that on the other side, they are saying we have to find a way to stop and contain Max Stockerty because he has been an absolute workhorse for the Trojans. Another game in that conference that we will have coverage of, Mount Pleasant at Southmoreland. The Scotties, they're still undefeated. I think there's 8 teams remaining. Don't hold me to that, but somewhere in that ballpark who are still unblemished in the WPIAL. The Scotties are certainly one of them. But as they say, throw the record books out the window when it's Vikings and Scotties. It's going to be a fun matchup, and the most fun part about it is who's going to be broadcasting it.
Yes, I guess that's the most fun part. I don't know. Maybe for me, myself and John Bainbridge will be back at Southmoreland at Russ Grimm Field broadcasting the Scotties again. We had their game against Ringgold, and will be fun to call this one against Mount Pleasant. 2 Westmoreland County teams, 2 rivals. These teams have been playing each other since the beginning of time, so should be fun to see the matchup.
Yeah, looking forward to seeing how that one plays out. Those teams, the opposite of the Trojans and the Golden Lions, they're each 2-0 in the Interstate Conference. Remember, it's just a 5-game slate for conference play. Armstrong at Kiski area Cavaliers coming off of a couple of wins. They're 2-2, and the Riverhawks are 2-1 in the 5A Big East Conference. Bell Vernon area desperately needs a win. They should have a good opportunity. Those Leopards, they're heading to play Laurel Highlands. The Mustangs 0-2, much like the Leopards are in conference play. Elizabeth Forward, with its 6-1 mark, is at York. The Cougars have dropped 5 straight after a couple of wins to start the season for Benny Hoffer's crew. Highlands at Burrell. Buccaneers trying to ride Antonio Perkins and Trey Corey to another victory. They're going against a red-hot Highlands team that is 3-1 in the conference. Valley. Oh, well, sorry. Their season has been, I guess, something to sneeze at because they are 0-7 this year. How about that for a smooth recovery? Vikings looking for their first win. This might be their opportunity. They're going against East Allegheny, as the Wildcats are just 1-6.
God bless
South
you, by
Park,
the way, Sean. I'm sorry.
Thank you, Dan. I appreciate that. South Park at Ligonier Valley. Hard to believe because you saw South Park playing in a WPL semifinals last year, Flick. They are 0-3 in the conference. They have a losing record overall. That said, they are going to Weller Field to play the Ligonier Valley Rams, who are also 0-3 in 2A conference play. Brentwood at Jeanette. This is another must-have game for the Jayhawks. They're going against a 2-2 Spartans team. Remember, last year, they needed a fantastic finish. That's something we touched on with Coach Thomas Pallone. Springdale at Greensburg Central Catholic. Dynamos, a rough go for them. They are winless on the campaign. Monessen at Burgettstown. How about this for a non-conference for Greater Latrobe? Pine Richland heads to Memorial Stadium, the 6-1 Rams against the 2-5 Wildcats. And are we going back in time like a dozen years? Because Thursday football hits Norwin at Pittsburgh Central Catholic. Now, typically, you kind of expect that this one could be lopsided, but after what we've seen from Norwin taking NA to the limit, I think this will be very curious to see if the Knights playing at Gessling Stadium can hang with the Vikings.
I think so, too. I mean, I know that they were at home against North Allegheny and things were going right for them and everything. And I know Central Catholic is a better team, than North Allegheny. Not by much, but a better team. So it'll be a stiffer challenge for Norwin, but I don't know how much Central Catholic actually has a home field advantage, right? I mean, being a private school,
they don't rotating home field. I'll say
they have rotating home field. They don't traditionally have a ton of fans, so it's a Thursday night game. It's very, very interesting because But you're right. I didn't know. Has this been going on all year where they've had Thursday night games?
I don't think it has
because of
now,
TV.
There might have
that's
been a
why,
Thursday
obviously.
game last week. But yeah, it was 10 or 12 years ago when that was a thing.
Yeah, I actually remember so Franklin Regional played somebody, I forget who it was, and they had to move it to Thursday night because of TV. But the
I
Penguins
believe Jeanette played a Thursday night, maybe against GCC that I covered back in my Latrobe Bulletin.
Possible.
Days.
But what I was going to get at before you rudely interrupted me,
sorry,
was so Franklin Regional played somebody on a Thursday, but they were on tape delay, so they couldn't even televise it live. I think because of the Penguins or something. So we went in there and video streamed the game. So we had everybody watching Westmoreland Sports Network because we were the only ones to video stream, and it was the only game of the night. There you go.
Well, I mean, I guess they're 1-0, but I don't know that the Penguins are going to be preempting any high school games this season. It looks like it could
Come on now.
Well, yeah. I think most people are hoping that they finish as bad as possible to get that guy at Penn State.
That McKenna guy.
Anyway,
yeah.
We will also have a Saturday game that is at the college ranks, as we mentioned before. Slippery Rock 0-2 in the PSAC West. The Rock trying to bounce back at Seton Hill. A noon kickoff at Offutt. We will have broadcast coverage of that. And St. Vincent is at Bethany. Both of those teams looking for their first win in the PAC. It'll be under the lights on Saturday at 7. Flick, what else would you like to touch on before we wrap up?
I don't know. You always put me on the spot, and I just kind of say the same things every week. I am intrigued by that Seton Hill Slippery Rock game, by the way. Seton Hill riding high, Slippery Rock again, reeling maybe, or maybe they come in very mad that they lost last week, and I don't know. We'll see what happens at Offutt, but certainly some key games this week. We mentioned those Westmoreland County games: Derry, Greensburg, Salem, Mount Pleasant, Southmoreland. Can Hempfield make sure that they stay alive and get a playoff spot? That starts this week as well against Seneca Valley. Bell Vernon needs to come up with a win against again a Laurel Highlands team that is also 0-2 in the conference. So it's just interesting when you get to the end of the season just how important these games become. And we're not quite there yet in week 7, but it'll be interesting to see kind of how everything plays out. I do want to mention that we have a huge Recruiting Thursday interview this week with, I should have had Sean Myers do it because he's the wrestling expert. Instead, we settled for Jack Ridenauer. He is a Penn State expert. You are Sean, not Jack, but Anyway, Landon Sidden, we'll have that up tomorrow on our website. He is one of the best wrestlers in the country. He is a Norwin wrestler, and he recently committed to the best wrestling program in the country in Penn State. So you don't want to miss that interview up on our YouTube channel on Thursday.
Yes, absolutely. And by the way, I had teased this before, but our Westmoreland alum Q&A with Jonas King from last week.
Yes.
I know a lot. Donnie Football in particular was very excited to read that Q&A with the former Mount Pleasant star.
He liked that one. You said his parents taught at Greensburg-Salem, huh? I did not know that.
Yes, I believe both Jonas King's father and mother were teachers for Donnie. And I know this was mentioned in the article, his sister, Lily King.
Yeah, she's kind of a decent athlete, I've heard.
She's going to be in the GOAT conversation potentially for Westmoreland County athletes.
Yeah.
And that's not an exaggeration when it's all said and done in all likelihood. So good stuff there. And of course, we talk about it all the time. Our website, our social media, be checking them out every single day, but in particular on Friday. Check it out early in the morning. Check it out before the games start, right as they're taking place. And then, of course, afterwards as well, because we've got previews. We've got all the scoring updates throughout, and then we've got the recap when the night is done, in addition to all of our video recaps that may or may not be sometimes filmed in a driveway, sometimes filmed in front of Halloween decorations.
Whatever you got to do. Maybe you can do it next week on like a broom or something and wearing a witch hat.
That's not a bad idea. All right, that's going to do it for this edition of Westmoreland on the Gridiron. We thank Thomas Pallone of Jeanette and Antonio Perkins of Burl. For Flick, Sean saying we'll catch you again next week, 7 p.m. on Wednesday, right here on Westmoreland on the Gridiron. It's powered by Bauer.
Enjoy the games, everybody.